Welcome to the next in the series of our short video interviews where we ask what's next post-COVID-19 with our HR Director Readership. So joining me today is Vicky Wallis, who is the HR Director of the Direct Line Group. So good morning, Vicky. How are you? And thanks for joining me.
Good morning, Peter. I'm very well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. Vicky, I think the best route to start is you give us a little idea of your role with the Direct Line Group and your sort of overall responsibilities, so we get to know a little bit more about you.
Yeah, of course. We can probably talk about this a little bit more during the meeting, but I'm 10 weeks into my role at Direct Line Group as the Chief People Officer. And my role covers the full gambit of HR activity, people activity, right through from recruitment to payroll, to learning, to development, and also communications, internal communications. So it's the whole gambit of the focus out and the people agenda and people strategy for the organisation.
Okay, great. So, my goodness me. So literally 10 weeks in and COVID-19. So my goodness me. Right. Okay. So when we go through this, I'm sure this will come out very clear. And right. So the first question really is to kick off my sort of COVID-19 coming through the crisis and preparing for a better future. And this is really about what are your key present concerns and challenges for your employees and the organisation right now?
Yeah, so right now, Peter, I mean, obviously, recent weeks, it's about making sure people were safe and getting people working from home. So, and this predates me slightly, but, you know, within 2 days, 9,000 people started working from home. And it was a very fast turnaround to get everybody, all our call centre staff who'd never really worked from home at all, within breakneck speed. The organisation sort of focused on getting that working. And actually now everybody's working successfully from home. And have been for the last 10 weeks. So that was the first priority. Then obviously the other very important thing was to make sure that we were keeping engaged with our colleagues. All of a sudden you haven't got the mechanisms that you used to have to actually find out how things were going. The face-to-face conversations aren't as easy, and the team meetings, etc. So the technology then followed with MS Teams and various other sources of sort of collaboration, but also engagement. So we started a weekly engagement survey with colleagues. It used to be every 6 months, and overnight we turned it into a weekly, which was very much about a theme a week, just to get a sense of how people were feeling about how they were being led, how they were being communicated with, had they got the technology they needed, could they actually deliver their role effectively. And we've had a phenomenal response to a sort of regular pulse rate. And actually, the great thing about that is you get to hear really quickly how people are feeling and you can act on it, which we have. So that's been another area of focus. I think, obviously, one of the key concerns that we've had is about people's mental health.
Yeah.
And I know that there's been a lot of discussion about that sort of externally. So we've really tried to make sure that we, first of all, were very clear with colleagues about and we were fortunate enough to be able to say we weren't going to furlough anyone. So immediately you got sort of with your Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we got that one sorted fairly quickly. So people were clear we weren't going to furlough. We had triggered some redundancy programs earlier in the year, which we put on hold. So we made a commitment that we wouldn't actually put anyone at risk until sort of September time to give people some certainty. We also put in place the normal sort of we had 130 mental health first aiders who've gone into overdrive in terms of supporting people. And the other key thing, which I'm sure everybody's been working on, and it's gone up a notch or two, is communication.
Yeah.
A massive amount of communication. And coming into the organisation, that's something that I've picked up is really, really strong in DLG, is that real drumbeat of comms, but the focus on it has been really high and it's gone down very well. I mean, some people will say, you know, you're over communicating, and others will say we want more, but on average, I would say we've probably pitched that right. So those have been the key areas of focus, really, is to make sure people are confident and comfortable at home. They've got the facilities and the equipment they need to work. They've got a good link in with their line manager or their people manager, which I have to say has been phenomenal. And they can actually just get on with their job. And I think to date, that's going well, actually. That's been our key areas of focus to this point.
Terrific. So yeah, so that the speed you've been able to kind of, there's a lot of talk about agility, which I like, you know, because you've just had to. So no, that's good to know. And the fact you haven't furloughed anyone is quite incredible. So well done you. So okay, good. So let's move on to question 2 then. So this is more about the preparing for the staged return, because as we're kind of moving quite rapidly at the moment, and obviously with government advice, and obviously you've got, you know, this is I guess more UK centric, I guess. But so what measures are you implementing to keep everyone safe, and what are the plans for reboarding?
Yeah. So we've sort of had 3 areas of focus. The first one was the one that I talked to, is making sure that people can be effective at home at the moment. So that was the first one. The second phase is really about a very phased return to the office. And we made it very clear to colleagues that we wouldn't start to do that until September.
Yeah.
And we had initially said June. And then when we got to sort of late May, we decided actually it was better to be clear with colleagues. We just didn't see that happening until September, because actually we don't need it to. And so why rush? We have a very large proportion of our colleagues, nearly 50%, who rely on public transport to get to work. So that's a really key factor. And of course, the other key factor, which everybody's grappling with, is schools. And so we have a very high proportion of our colleagues who have young children. And they are very dependent on being at home at the moment to be able to support that. And obviously, so that aligned better with September as well. Yeah. And even in September, to be honest, Peter, I don't see us having a huge amount of people back in the office. We're trying to identify who we believe should be there. Are those who working from home just isn't conducive. Yeah. So we're going to try and prioritise them. And there are some areas where it would be more helpful for the moment for us to get some people back in. I don't imagine it'll be anywhere near even 20% of our population. But for those people, it's very much about safety, security, cleaning arrangements. You know, really, you know, I've seen plans of sort of the floors in different buildings and how we're going to move people around, you know, the cleaning arrangements we're going to have, the signage, to give everybody comfort. And what we're going to try and do is we're going to do some virtual tours so people can begin to imagine what it might look like as they go back in, because I do think people are probably imagining what it was like, and thinking about going back into that, whereas actually it's going to feel quite different. So we're working on that. And then the third area of focus is obviously the longer term strategy. Yeah. And that's another area we've got our senior leadership team population really beginning to think about that. And also we've just sent out a survey to our 11,000 staff on, you know, where are their heads? What are they finding from this new experience? What can we learn as an organisation, and what can we develop that suits them and suits the organisation as well? So it's an opportunity as well for us to rethink things.
Yeah. I think this two-way, there's a lot of this coming out, which is really terrific to hear. This engagement piece in terms of trying to keep their so many people are anxious, or as you rightly say, putting off till September is great. And everyone's lives are different, aren't they? Schools impacted, as you quite rightly say. So it's kind of how do you kind of look after everyone so they're all comfortable and feeling confident about returning. Okay, Vicky, that's terrific. Okay, so let's move on to question 3, which is really then, which you're kind of inferring a little bit there, this learning now, because I think from this there's a great piece here about this learning, and I'm really keen to make sure that hopefully we play our part and not going back to what it was. And so I guess what opportunities are you exploring from the learning so far, and equally, you know, I do sort of pin a little bit on the organisation itself in terms of its journey destination, because you know that I think is changing in a lot of cases. So, and how does that impact you as an HRD, your HR function, and your organisation and employees?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There are opportunities that come from this difficult scenario we're in, and we absolutely need to grab those, Peter. It would be very foolish of us to go back. And we've had some great conversations in the organisation, and there is a huge appetite across all levels in the organisation to use this as an opportunity to change. One of our areas of our vision is around being a force for good. And actually, this is an opportunity for us to be a force for good in multiple ways. And it's interesting, isn't it, when you write visions and purposes and things like that, it's only at times like this when you really get to test them. Yeah. And we really have tested it. And I think from a vision perspective, we really have aimed to be a force for good across all our stakeholders, you know, our colleagues, in terms of, you know, protecting them, looking after them, not furloughing them because we were in a position not to have to. Our shareholders, and also to our customers, which is so important. We've tried to really work with our customers where they've been in vulnerable situations themselves and not being able to pay premiums and struggling, and we've come up with all sorts of different arrangements to help that. So I think it's tested that, and it's absolutely tested our ways of working and forced a jet propelling of technology usage, which is brilliant. I think the other thing that's probably sits at the heart of it is suddenly there's a massive trust of our colleagues, that you are doing your job effectively, and you're not being seen every day. And we know that, I'm not saying this is a DLG thing, but we know that some of the home working issues and the fact that it hasn't moved at pace in organisations was that slightly more traditional way of managing people. And all of a sudden overnight that had to be changed. I've seen, honestly, from some of our colleagues, I've seen Herculean efforts to make sure that they can still deliver to the organisation and to customers and have their children at home and try and homeschool. So we've seen that test of that arrangement with colleagues as well has been really good, and that commitment and that goodwill. And I think what we now need to do, to the point I was talking about earlier, is we need to listen to what we're hearing from our colleagues and learn from it, because a large number of them like this way of working. And it works for them, and it's giving them a better quality of life. I know that doesn't apply to everybody. For some, it's really been very hard. But in the main, we're seeing a lot of our colleagues saying, no, we do like this. We like this flexibility. We like this arrangement. And please, will you listen to it? You've asked us the question, listen to us now, and let's adapt to it, which is exactly what we're doing. And we're really, as I say, we've done the survey within. Within 36 hours of the survey going out, 6,000 people had completed it.
Wow, really?
Because they really, they know they're going to be heard, because I think they've seen over the last 10 weeks they're being listened to. I'm not saying they weren't before, they were absolutely, but particularly in the last 10 weeks. So, and other things that we've adapted to during this time, the way we're recruiting people, the way we're onboarding people, we're doing it all virtually. And I'm an example of that, because I've been totally onboarded from within this room. All my meetings have taken place in this room. I haven't left home, and actually it can work very effectively. I think we do have to maybe shift our mindset slightly to the way we build relationships with people. But all of a sudden, what I've seen is leaders becoming very human. And all of a sudden we are on a level with everybody's on a level with each other. We're all working in our own homes. We're all experiencing the challenges that people are experiencing from a mental well-being perspective, from a childcare perspective. Everybody's suddenly in the same mix. And that human side is making organisations, I think, listen better, and leaders be more accessible, I think. And we need to absolutely keep hold of that. We've probably been talking about leaders showing more vulnerability and more humility, and all of a sudden that's absolutely happened. There's no book. Somebody described to me the other day that they must have missed the pandemic class at school, and actually there was no book for this, and actually leaders saying, I don't actually know how we're going to manage some of this, but we're going to work through it step by step, and we'll keep you in the loop on it. It's a great thing for organisations to hear, because all of a sudden you're on that journey with each other. You're being very honest with each other, and there's an adult relationship going on. So I think that's been really good. And the technology piece is a growing enabler. I think if we hadn't got the technology that we all have now, it would have been a much more challenging time. So from an HR perspective, to that point of your question, wow, I mean, the people agenda is right at the fore, and HR was much more of a strategic partner in recent years anyway, but all of a sudden it's really driving and enabling the success of the organisation in a way that we probably haven't had the opportunity always to do. We're on the pulse of everything. Particularly for me, it's fantastic having the communications function sitting within HR as well, because you've got all the tools you're trying to utilise to help people, and the mechanism to get the communication out to them. And so the way we're thinking, as I said, about recruitment, the way we're thinking about talent, the way we're thinking about what greater access we might have to talent if we're less bound by locations, and the sort of accessibility of talent. There's the well-being agenda, the diversity agenda. They're all very much at the forefront. I mean, obviously in recent weeks, the Black Lives Matter campaign and the focus there, which has been a very humbling, leveling experience for many of us, again gives us the opportunity to bring that into the mix of some of our conversations at the moment, as we're really reimagining the way we do things.
Yeah.
So I think it's, you know, it's a great time to be in HR or in people in environments, because we have a lot of responsibility, actually, I think, and a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, no, I think that's quite true, Vicky. I think it's the first time a few people have said this, that stakeholders, shareholders, employees, everyone's kind of on the right page, on the same page, you know, and
Yeah.
I really like that going forward. And I think, yeah, this whole listening and there's a real empathy, you know, there, because I think we're all, and we're all, yeah, having our lives slightly differently turned upside down and sampling a piece of home life, which we didn't normally get, and really kind of, yeah, really sort of, we really want to sort of keep some of those things, don't we?
Yes,
and, yeah,
definitely.
there's a balance. Okay. So finally for you then, really, I mean, I know obviously not quite in this role because you're only 10 weeks in and it's a bit strange, but HRD at this point in time in our history, I mean, what do you think? How are you doing yourself? Is it mad? Is it crazy? Is it scary? How are you feeling about it all?
Yeah, I think actually quite energized. I mean, I'm new into an organization, and so you bring a new energy with you, don't you, anyway? Strange environment to be settling into, but actually it's working pretty well. And it's fairly intense. I would say it's fairly intense, but it's also there are significant opportunities that we need to grab. And as I say, from a people agenda, to have some of these opportunities to rethink and reimagine the way we do things is an opportunity you're not going to get very often.
No.
And to my point earlier, we have a real responsibility to keep driving that agenda. And I feel a big responsibility to do that within DLG. And I'm really excited about that. And there's a real appetite in the organisation to grab that as well. So the people agenda is being owned by the whole organisation, not just by me. But obviously I and my team have got to help drive and define some of that, but there's so much appetite to grab it wider. It's great. So for me, exciting, humbling in some respects as well, and energizing.
Yeah, no, okay. And I think, and just quickly, I guess your business has not been, although it's been impacted, perhaps commercially it's not been so impacted that some might be, I guess. So I guess that's a good thing. It gives you probably a bit more time and to kind of reflect. So I don't know.
Yes, yeah, we are in a fortunate position. From an insurance perspective, yes, there's ups and downs in terms of different parts of the market that we are in, but generally speaking, we are in a fortunate position in comparison to many.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Vicky, that is excellent. Thank you for that. Some really great ideas and different ways people are looking at things. So if you just bear with me 1 second. But so listen, join me next time when I talk to another HR director about their challenges and as we look at these opportunities ahead. So thanks, Vicky.
It's a pleasure, Peter. Thank you.